All right, Danielle, episode 15 of the Worksties. For those that are following life path numbers, that's 6. Do the math.
I recently learned a new statistic about podcasts that only 8% of new podcasts make it past the first episode.
Oh,
So we're like way ahead of the game.
that's right. That's right. I remember you had the stat for I forget how
I
many.
heard that before, and I heard this yesterday that most of them don't. I don't know where these come from, but you know, I know that there's a lot out there that are just like 1 or 2 episodes.
Yeah. Yeah. Someone had a stat today when I was on a call, but it said 46% of Gen Zers find their job on TikTok. I thought that was a really high stat.
Interesting.
Even with the social influencing thing is just picking up now. But I do see a lot of the videos that show different things. But I thought that was a high 46%.
How would
It
you even,
sounds a little erroneous.
you'd have to know the metrics for everything, wouldn't you? To
I
like
would think so.
be able to survey the whole thing. I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm
I
going to
used to
research
joke
it.
that like I used to joke that 82% of all statistics are made up on the spot.
Yeah.
And so like I just made that up.
I thought it was, 79, but that's fine.
Oh, well, I mean, I think it fluctuates between 79 or 78 and 83.
That's
But
right. That's
yeah,
right.
I don't know how you would even measure that. I mean, because it would have to be all Gen Zers who are on TikTok found and then compared to.
It's a super high percentage. There's not that many jobs out there as there are Gen Zers that would be on the platform promoting their job. So I thought it was interesting. So that one stuck with me when we were just talking about stats. But anyways, episode 15, this episode is sponsored by socialjobs.com. Check them out to advertise your jobs socially. All right, in this episode, we are talking about, Danielle are going to update us on the green banner. Did it flourish or did it fail or somewhere in between? There'll be some random stats in there that we'll throw
Yeah, I
out.
mean, I did update shortly after I did it, and
Yes.
so there was some immediate activity, which most of it was scammy, and was interesting because I was like, I just kind of wanted to see it through and see what would happen. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't go to the point of like getting an actual quote of what would cost to do the recommended. It'd be interesting to do it if I had like the extra funds just to do a couple and see what it did, but because I don't think they were probably really expensive. They were probably less than $100 a piece potentially. But yes, that was interesting. And then, those people just kind of went away. There was no follow up or anything. And then I've had more people, I think I've noticed, look at my page.
Mm.
I don't have I don't have a premium page, so I can't see everybody, but I have noticed that. So I think maybe I'm showing up a little bit differently in some of the results. That could be just my own engagement. And I think the more interesting thing was that I wasn't really expecting was that a few people from my life that I hadn't connected with in a really long time got in touch with me who are also looking for work. And one of them is somebody that I worked with, that you and I both worked with at another company, 2 companies actually. And another one was a friend that somebody I've known since high school. And we'd kind of drifted apart over the year due to life and stuff. And he's looking for work, and we're kind of in similar industries, so we
Mm-hmm.
talked a lot about that. And then the person that we worked with before has been in recruiting for probably his whole career. So in that case, it was nice just to kind of share insights of what we've been experiencing. We're all in different locations, what's going on kind of in our universe, if you will, and then sort of our interpretations of what we're all seeing in the market, what we're experiencing. It was all very similar, just slightly different in that, it's hard to get traction, going the sort of traditional route maybe isn't working, the frustration of having interviews and then not getting follow up when follow up would have happened before. And
Mm-hmm.
just the idea that like it's taking so long and how that kind of messes with your sense of self.
Yeah.
It's really easy to feel let down that this thing that you put a lot of effort into, like LinkedIn, right? We've all used it for so many years. You build your profile, you build your network, and you think, oh well, when the time comes that I'm looking for something new, I'll be able to reach out to my network and I'll be able to do these things. And it's kind of disappointing when that isn't working out the way you thought it would happen. Maybe it will, but maybe it's taking a lot longer than you expected. So, how that kind of messes with your ego and what you know,
Mm,
like, we're all the three of us, we're all kind of in the same generation, kind of in the
yeah.
same place in our careers. And so it's interesting just to kind of talk shop with somebody like that who's in a similar situation, just to kind of share frustrations and wins. And, like we've all kind of gotten into working on our own and, you know, trying to do some things on the side that are kind of keep our skills fresh and that sort of thing. And my friend I talked to yesterday was really excited because he helped somebody that he knew who had reached out to him, and he kind of helped her um get out of the job that she's in, and she's getting ready to start her new job. And so she's really excited. Even though it wasn't him landing a new job, he helped somebody else.
Yeah.
And that was a win for him. And I was like, yeah, I think that's kind of what we all see, because like when you landed your role, while I was like, man, why can't I get that? But I was really excited and happy for you because I know how much you'd been working towards that. So, it is a little bit like bittersweet in a certain way
Yeah.
that you're helping somebody get something, but at the same time, it kind of reaffirmed that he knew what he was doing and he was giving good advice. So he's kind of exploring doing that. And um I gave him some thoughts and some things that he should consider about, starting your own business and stuff. And so I feel like that's something that we'll probably continue to talk, which is
Hmm.
nice to reconnect with somebody that I was so close to so
Yeah.
long ago in that way. And that now later in our lives, we can kind of reconnect and have a different shared experience.
Yeah.
So I would say that that is, I met somebody else a couple weeks ago who found us. I think she found me because of that post, like when I put up the banner,
Hmm.
and then she listened to the podcast and she reached out to me and then we had a great conversation. But I was like, oh, she's totally somebody I would want to go have coffee with and chat. And so, there's all of that to say that there's a lot of people out there that you may not realize are going through the same thing. And I don't think I would have reconnected with the ones I did or meet this new person if I hadn't put that banner up. So even though there was some negativity to it, I think that it helped. And I am currently interviewing for two different roles that I'm excited about, both of them. And I don't know that would have happened as easily if I hadn't been showing that I was open to work and able to start quickly. So maybe it helped there, maybe it didn't. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I'll take it as that it helped for now, at least.
Yeah. I think, anytime we do something and we put ourselves out there, because that's really when you think about that open to work banner, there's a lot of people who were afraid to do it or not sure the optic of it. You think about just that perception, and we've heard so
It took
much
me like
about it.
8, 9 months to do it. Yeah.
Yes, like it is. I think just that and taking that step to say, I am looking, I am available for work. I think it also, like personally, creates a different dynamic within, if that makes any sense, to say, okay, like it's okay that I'm looking. And I feel like it does give some confidence there too, as well, especially when people start to encourage you. Yes, there's some spammy things that happen or whatever. But I think just that community around you, regardless if it puts something out there, networking is so important and doing all that, but just knowing that there are people that are there supporting you that are in the same boat. Some reach out to say, hey, let me know how I can help. Like I know someone reached out to me looking for a recruiter role, and I was like, I don't have recruiters anymore. Like I'm not running a team, which it was
Right.
so
I've had a
easy,
lot of that
because I
too.
knew great people.
Yeah.
I would place them almost immediately, right? If they were looking for work, and so many people were used to that. But, I was like, let me know how I can help. And she's like, gosh, can we just have a conversation? Like, I'm overthinking. I'm, feeling this type of way, looking at this market. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. So we connected. I think it was for an hour or something like that. We just had a good conversation. So I think, if nothing else, with the banner, right? Just feeling and understanding that there is a community around you and there are people that support you, that do know you do quality work and you have made an impact in places that you've been. I think that alone speaks volumes. And it also, just shows you that people care and do remember what you've done. And we're like, wow, this person's looking, that's crazy. Because I've seen so many good people out there. They've been out there for a while looking. I think that's an important piece of it. Like like I
Yeah.
said, regardless, it creates whatever. But that
That's true.
community, and knowing, did you feel good after that? Like I feel
Oh
like it
yeah.
did give you like a boost. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
it
Like,
totally did. And I
yeah.
think, like, when we were both looking at the same time, I was like, man, if she can't find a job, what am I going to do? You know what I mean? Because when you have respect for people that you've worked with and you know their skills, it's kind of validating in a weird way that, like, well, okay, then I guess it's not just me, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's not something wrong with me because you start to feel like, oh, what's wrong with me? Why can't I? And then but by having these conversations, it's interesting because you kind of, you get different perspectives, you get different insights of like things that work for them potentially, or can
Mm-hmm.
give them advice to say, yeah, I tried that and it didn't really work out, but maybe if you did it this way. I remember last summer I was thinking about like doing like a weekly meeting, sort of a meet a coffee and chat kind of thing once a week with other people who were looking, and
Mm-hmm.
that never came to fruition because one of the people I was interested in having joined that, and she was interested in it, found a job really quickly. So I was like, okay. And then, but now I'm like, gosh, maybe I should still do that. And then maybe not end it when I get work, but like continue on until everybody who's part of that group finds work or whatever. Because I think we network in, like, I always try to add people on LinkedIn, but I get really, when I am working, I'm usually so busy. I'm not on there a lot.
Yes.
And then there's that balance of like, when you are looking, it's hard to be on there all the time because sometimes you feel discouraged because there's all these people starting jobs and you see more people who are getting laid off and whatever. And so it can get in your head. And so you have to kind of figure out how to be dispassionate about it and not let your ego get involved. And that's hard, really. So you want to kind of balance that. So I think the networking is great and messaging on LinkedIn, but actually getting on the phone and talking to
Yeah.
somebody. And what was interesting about these conversations is all of us talked just on the phone. And I thought, oh, well, that's our generation too. Like we all just talked on the phone. We all kind of
Mm-hmm.
coordinated a time to talk, but there was no, or there's no Teams, no Zoom, Google Meets. I mean, we could have done that, but it was just nice just to not be looking at somebody and having to be aware of your presence or what's behind you. Could just be yourself and talk.
Yeah. I've done some video call, like the one that I did where I talked for an hour. It was a video call, but I haven't
Oh,
seen
and
her
I
in
think
like
that's really helpful too.
20 years. I was like, how cool would it be, to see her. So we, spent some time. And like I said, I have not face to face saw her. I mean, I've seen her picture pass on LinkedIn and things like that, but I hadn't had a face to face interaction with her in like, it was almost 20 years. It was back at Orbital, is where I worked with, and she was a recruiter on my team. One of the most amazing recruiters I've ever worked with.
You have to tell me
So
offline in case it's somebody I know.
yeah, so it was, yeah, I'll have to tell you, but I don't know if you ever cross paths, 'cause when I was doing a lot of the project launch stuff and things like that in the sales and solution design. And
Okay.
so she was on Ironwood Communications, but I don't think you worked on Ironwood with me. But anyways, so it was great to connect. And then there's other people that I just connect with on the phone and all of that. And I think one of the most important things, because again, like I applied to so many jobs when I was looking, I interviewed for a lot of jobs, I did presentations.
You did a
There
lot. You were
is,
hustling.
yeah, and I think, having that moment where I was walking over the vomit to get into the office, where I was like, what am I doing again?
That
I don't know if I told you this story,
I don't think you did. I would remember vomit.
but
Yeah.
I was like so close. It was next to a quick care and it was a staffing office.
Oh, okay.
So
That explains. I was like, was somebody hungover? Like, what happened?
yeah, they really didn't clean up around there. Like it was, and I was thinking to myself, like,
Oh, hazard.
what am I gonna do? What do I really want to do? What do I want to go back to? So I think that's also another thing is being able to do something, right? So, we both done kind of the Uber thing and the DoorDash and the to keep
Yep.
yourself
Doing it
busy as you're
regularly.
looking and
Yeah.
finding the right thing. And I think that's another key, like doing, I don't know, whatever it is, even though it might not be what you want to do, and just kind of getting yourself into the groove of something to say, okay, at least I'm doing something. And then as you find, an interview for a million different things out there, what do you really want to do? Where will you stay? Where you have longevity becomes another thing to think about, because I think a lot of people in our generation too are stuck in, although I've switched company to company, you've switched company to company with me, but there's still this sense of loyalty once you take something, you know? So I think that's yet another struggle that people, because
But there's no loyalty in
yeah.
return, right? Although we're always a family, but yeah, because I feel like I mean, it's really easy to get comfortable in a role and just be like, I know what I'm doing. I feel comfortable. This is, because sometimes if you leave a company and go somewhere else, what are you getting yourself into?
Hmm.
Um, so there's that, and so there's a certain level of risk, especially when you're a sole supporter or you don't have something else to back you up. But you're right. I mean, I think that's why there's people who stay at jobs for 30 years, and I can't even imagine that.
Oh my
I mean,
gosh.
there's no place that I've ever worked that I would
Yeah.
have wanted to be for 30
Mm-mm.
years. But I know it happens. People do it. And I mean, it was definitely more of a boomer thing. I mean, I
Yeah.
have a lot of people in my family who have worked and retired from government jobs, whether it's state, county, federal. And I mean, I don't think I could do that because it's just, yeah, there's a certain amount of security in it and you get a pension and, those types of things. But they always seem depressed by their job,
Yeah.
like they're sort of beaten down in a weird way. And I don't really know what that is, and I like to be enthusiastic about what I'm doing and feel good about it. I mean, I remember one time my dad had said something to the effect of, he was telling me about a conversation he had with someone else that they were like, "Oh, I don't like my job." And he was like, "Nobody likes their job." And I was like, "I love my job,"
Right.
and I
These are the
really
jobs
did.
I loved.
Yeah, and I mean, that was a moment in time, and then there was change, and then I fell into something else that I loved. But I was genuine. I was like, no, I love my job. It's not easy. It challenges me every day, but that's the goal, right? If you can feel challenged and happy in what you're doing, and I think that always comes, especially in talent acquisition, when you're helping people
Mm.
to get to work, it's really satisfying. But it also kind of messes with your mind when you can't find a job yourself. You're like, what is happening?
I think there's like this, once you start a job too, there's still this question in your mind if it took you a long time to find a role or maybe you stop working, whatever the case may be, no matter what the rhyme or reason is. I think there's unspoken things that happen mentally. Like if you're on the market for, I don't know, year, 2 years, three, whatever that is, right? And you're looking and you secure a job, making sure you don't get into the mental state of, well, why did I get hired? Why didn't I? And then you start questioning yourself when this is something you've done for however many years. Like, I think also don't let that creep in. We talked about, kind of I hate the word imposter syndrome. I'm never going to love it. I'm just never going to love it. And I don't like that people brought it up and put it in my mind
It
because I
makes me
never
think of
thought this.
imposter fragrances in the 80s. Do you remember imposter fragrances in the 80s and
Yes.
early 90s? That's what I think of when I see it.
That's what I think of too. Like, why do they have to make this a thing? But it does. Like, I think there's more, the more you kind of educate yourself, the more you read, the more you look at what's happening out there, and you can get into your own head and get into your own psyche and start really questioning yourself like every single day. So I think that's an important piece too, is to stay connected to people that will help validate you, that will, I helped someone do a presentation recently that's what, like, what do you think about this? And I was so excited to do it and help. That we need people like that in our lives to really bounce stuff off and to build back our, like, am I thinking about this right? Am I, because you can get into this environment and all of a sudden you're like, what did I do?
Right. And then
So,
I think when that validate, because that's like a validation, right, on your
mhm.
like your expertise and that you
Yeah.
have value outside of your family or whatever, like, that this is, because I mean, we spend most of our lives in our careers, right? Whether it's
Hmm.
learning skills, performing the duties, traveling, whatever, there's so much of our time. So when that is off balance, you feel very off. And so if you can have that validation from other people, especially if they're not people that you work with directly,
Yeah.
because sometimes when as like people will give you lip service if it's
And
people that you work
competition sometimes
competition
internally is high. You
and
have competitors you don't even know internally.
right. And that's
I
the
can
thing.
sense
Like
them though.
it
I
makes
know.
me think like, okay, in my next role, should I be a little more reserved and like not put myself so out there and share the knowledge that I have, that goes against who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like if I'm presenting myself accurately, that should be an expectation of an employer that I'm going to be like that. But not every employer will appreciate that either. So yeah, it kind of is a mind trip, really.
Yeah.
I could say another mind, but I'm not going to use. I'm going to try to be.
I know what you mean. I smell what you're stepping in. But the other thing we were going to talk about is, is it me or is it them? Like when the vibes are off at work, right? And the environment is really getting to you. Is it you? Is it them? Are you just hangry? Do you need to eat some food, drink some water, go back and think about it later?
Hydration will
Hydration. Like, I think that's another, we're in this economy and we're in this environment where it is, I think, scary to change jobs. I do see less people, I feel like, changing jobs than getting new jobs. I'm
I
trying
agree
to
with
think
that.
the last person that I saw go from company A to
I
company
think I've
B. It's
seen
been a little
somebody
while.
maybe since like January. I can think of a couple people that I know change jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. I think people are just kind of buckling down and staying where they're.
Yeah. And I think that becomes more, I don't know. We were talking a little bit about mental health from an environment standpoint. If you stay somewhere, so I have a friend, again, shall remain nameless, that was really struggling in the company that they were at. And the environment had gotten pretty toxic and things of that nature. But we're in this economy and we're in this cycle right now where you change jobs, you don't know what you're getting on the other side too. Is there a job you could actually change into? So fast forward, the job ends up getting eliminated. And now you're kind of forced to think about, what are you going to do next? What does that look like for you? And in this environment again, right, going to exactly what maybe there is an opportunity, maybe not. There's so many people competing for talent acquisition and
Mhm.
recruiting and things like that right now. She has this lens to say, maybe I want to do something completely different. And what does that look like for me? What do I do? Maybe I want to be a coach. Maybe I want to do something different. So I think that's another thing to really think about is sometimes, I don't know, your environment, if it's not conducive to you, what do you do? Do you hold? And if you hold, sometimes it's just going to fold on you,
Right. Gotta
or
know when to fold, to
you
quote
get in front of
Kenny.
it.
Yeah, gotta know when to fold.
And how do you know if it's you or the environment too? When you look at different environments out there, there's places that someone else might be okay, but maybe you're not okay to work there. Like for me, I think my line is operating with integrity, doing right by people, which again, in business, you have to make some hard decisions because of, whatever the conditions are and that impact people. But there's a right way to do that. There's a
Right.
right way to have a conversation. So, like, I know if I see people who are not being treated, I'll say fairly, or someone is selected over someone because of favoritism versus the work product that they produce or their quality of work or things like that, that's where I know it's the environment. It's not me. I got to go. I got to roll out. But there's some people who can execute on that without a problem. They're like, well, all right, so and so's head's got to roll. I don't care. If it's you, if it's an environment, how do you, in today's world and landscape, even navigate that? Because it's not like it was before where there's jobs aplenty. You go from one to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. There's longer cycle times, there's delays, there's ghosting, you name it, right? It's out there. So,
Yeah, and I think, before my job was eliminated, I was like, I had been thinking about moving on, but where and what does that look like? But there was also things I wanted to kind of do in in conjunction to what I was doing, but I didn't
mhm.
really feel like I had the time. I did have the time. I think I was more reacting to the environment I was in and how draining it was. So I was having a hard time mentally kind of setting aside, time in the evening or on the weekend to do what I wanted to do because I was so burned out. So, well, let's do this test and see, if I can reflect back on, was I burned out or was I just hangry?
Yeah. So, all right. So there's a dread test that we have. And then is it time to leave or time to just eat? test that we have. So, all right. You want to check the basics first? All right, we'll go through. So the first thing you got to think about is if you're hangry or if you're really just tired of your job is, did I eat a full meal today? Have I had at least 2 glasses of water? Did I sleep more than 6 hours last night? Have I done anything grounding? Have I gone for a walk? Have I spent some time in nature? All right. So if you check those boxes, now you go on to the next piece, which is, am I being me at work or a masked version of me? So tell me which ones you check on this, Danielle. I feel like I can be myself around my coworkers and leaders.
I would say for me in my last role, it would have probably been 50-50. You know,
Yeah.
could, I was trying to always be myself, but at the same time, maybe people didn't understand my humor or what I was trying to convey. I don't know. But yeah, I would say in hindsight, probably. At the time, I might have said it was higher, but now I'd say it's like 50-50.
I would answer, if you're being polished, you have to mask yourself.
You have to hold your cup with your little finger out.
Don't say that.
What would you say was yours? I would say that you probably didn't feel to be
I was
yourself.
probably me to my detriment. You know what I mean? Like there was this point in time that came and I was just like, I was going to say what I needed to say. I was going to provide my input whether someone wanted it or not because I was just hoping that there would be this wake up moment. I don't know, that someone would say,
No matter who you are, because I think that we've all worked with people who weren't being authentic or you knew did not feel a certain way and weren't
oh,
saying anything. And then you're like, why are you not saying anything? And then, but then, and the flip is like, then if you're the guy who's like, negative Nelly, whatever, like putting for, objecting to things, even if it's for good reason, people might just see that as like not being a team player,
yeah,
you
I
know?
think there's like two different things. There's toxic positivity, there's toxic negativity, right? And then there's this in between where you're just kind of the truth teller in the storyteller of it to say, hey, I'd like to caution you with these things because this is what I've, experienced, or could be the outcome of this, or just calling things for what they are. I just remember being in this meeting and someone was doing the talk around thing and they're like, well, some people in this, I pushed my chair back because I couldn't see him and I was like, are you talking about me? Because yes, I did say that. And here's why I said it, because you shouldn't be going around people's backs. You should be having an honest conversation with people and bringing them into the loop and then making the best decision for the person that we're talking about. But to do it in a go around, no, don't do that. So I think there was just so much like backbiting and side talk and that I just
Yeah,
had to,
that's so passive aggressive, right?
yeah,
Like
it was
just
very
not
passive
do that.
aggressive, very
Yeah.
passive aggressive. So, yeah.
And if you have a problem with it, like go to that person and talk to them about it.
Yeah. Hey, don't beat around the bush. If it's me, just say it. I can take it.
Don't
And I'll
don't
tell you
just
why.
pretend like, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm constantly editing my voice style or energy to fit in. I don't feel like I'm walking on eggshells or playing small. The walking on eggshells is a real thing. Like that in environments you can do
Well, I
do.
think too, that's a lot of it is like not having a thick skin, right? And and I understand, anybody who says work is not personal is lying because everything is personal. If it impacts you, it's personal. But you still have to have a certain amount of distance from things and be able to, even if it's something stings, like when you hear it and you feel like, oh, like you need to be able to take that back and go, okay, what can I learn from that? Or are they really just misunderstanding?
Mhm.
Or did I really screw this up and I need to fix it? And there's a lot of people who have a hard time with that. And, you know, especially if you're a leader, you should have a little more resilience in that.
Yeah, yeah, you would think so. Like I don't know. Like I always believe in surrounding yourself with people that challenge you in a good way, right?
Sure.
So I think in this way, you think in that way. I want someone else to think, different. If someone agrees with you and they're not challenging you and they're not, hey, have you thought about these things? Like, who are you really hiring and who are you bringing on your team? Because if you I don't know, if you just want a bunch of yes people,
Yeah, it's not a
you're not
sorority
gonna
or
grow.
fraternity
Yeah.
or something. Like, we're not all here to, you know, have the same, do the same thing, look the same way, whatever. And I'm sure people who are in sororities and fraternities wouldn't agree with that, but that's a lot of what the perception is. So when you have people who are like, oh, we just have to, like, Regina from Mean Girls, like, she's the leader and we've got to do whatever she wants. And, otherwise we're going to be on the outs. It's sort of like that idea.
When you said Mean Girls, in my head, the Saturday Night Live skit plays when there was this one group of people who were just like my stepdad, Gary. All the same, like all the same thoughts. Like that
I'll have the vocal
skit
fry.
pops in my head every time. Every time. All right. So some of the other things I don't dread video meetings or Slack messages. I think that's when like I really realized like I really had a problem in the environment when I was like, oh gosh, I got to get up today and I got to log in. And it felt like the worst thing in the world to me was to get up and actually log in. Like,
Yeah, that's
like I said, I've had some great places that I've worked in the beginning of, this environment. It was a great, I was so optimistic. And then sometimes you get there and just not what it seems.
yeah. I think that they like call it like the Sunday scaries, and when you're laying in bed and you don't want to get up because not because you're just really tired or you don't feel good or something like that, when you just mentally can't wrap your mind around
Hmm.
working, that's not a good place to be. So you either
No.
need to take some time off and figure out if it's just that you're burned out or if it's just not the right place for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, like I get excited. Like right now, I'm so excited to get on a bed and log on to work to see what my day brings. Like I look forward to that. And I always like if I think about my teams, I was always excited to talk to my teams that day and things of that nature. But sometimes when that wall was facing me on certain days, I was like, oh, I gotta go run into the
Well,
wall head
especially if
first.
like some of the people on your team are going to come to you with problems that you're going to have to try and solve or whatever, and you're like, I'm not feeling this.
Yeah, yeah. Or you get to the place where someone asks your opinion. Just remember this one conversation. And they were like, I need your opinion on this. I'm like, all right, call me in Teams, whatever. They call me. And the whole time that I'm giving my advice, they're doing this. And I'm like, well, if you didn't want my opinion or didn't want my real advice because I'm not agreeing with you, why are you wasting my time? And they're like, oh, I wanted it. I'm like, yeah, no, you didn't. Because you're doing this as I'm talking. Like this is
Right.
you're not agreeing because I don't agree with you. And
You just
you're
wanted me to
wrong in this one.
affirm
I'm
what you
going to
already
tell you you're
believe.
wrong.
You just wanted me to affirm what you already believed and not
Yeah.
actually.
And then you follow up with find the like. All right. So the next set of questions are I won't read them all. Do I feel like I'm growing here? So that's another like, do you feel like you're challenged? Do you feel a sense of purpose or impact? So maybe you're not even challenged, but do you have a sense of purpose and impact, or are you just kind of
Big,
doing the
because
mundane?
I definitely feel like I need to continuously be learning things. And a lot of times in some of the roles that I've been in, I've kind of learned as much as I can
Hmm.
because I'm not being challenged in a new way or the challenges are things that are like man-made challenges. Like people are
Yeah.
just not doing what they're supposed to do. It's driving you crazy because you're like, would you just make a decision? And then I can go do the thing, but I can't do the thing until you make the decision kind of. And so that's frustrating. But
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely feel like I'm not one of those people who can just do the same thing every day and be content and clock out and clock back it. You know what I mean? Like I've got to be doing something, feel motivated in some
Hmm.
kind of way.
Yeah.
And I
I feel
think you
like
are too.
I'm a constant learner too, but I'm also good if I'm teaching or I'm passing knowledge or saying this is how, I would look at it and how I would solve it. So I don't, if I'm not in a learning environment, which now I have both, which is pretty cool, but if I'm not in a learning, and I think I've always had a little bit of both. Sometimes it's been more teetering towards like if I think about Elmer days, that was all learning, man. Like that was a
It
fun
was like
time.
baptism by fire for a
Yeah,
couple of years there.
that was all learning if I think about it. And then same thing with Orbital back in the day. A lot of that was all learned because it's very early in career, right? And then Elmer was a completely different role, which was really cool. Well, I mean, there were some of the same elements, but had all the tools and technology there. And then kind of going forward, you learn kind of what's there, the tech, the product, the what's happening in the work environment. And then you have your common solves. You always know to lift those covers because there's a lot of bugs and dust under there that people hide. They hide some stuff. I hate when people hide stuff. Don't hide it. Just let's pull
It
it up
always
and let's fix it. Like,
always happens. Yeah.
let's deal with it head on. Don't hide stuff.
Yeah.
So, and then if I'm passing knowledge, right, or solving or helping someone else solve based on the knowledge, I'm good. Like, I'm good in those environments. Like, those keep me fulfilled,
Yeah.
but it has to be, some element of one of those things or a combination of those things.
I agree with that because I feel like the last couple of years for me have been more in that guiding and teaching and mentoring type
Mm-hmm.
of a role. Whereas my role isn't necessarily that, but because of the people that I've worked with, that, I'm big on sharing the knowledge, whether it's somebody who's reporting to me and I'm helping to level them up, or somebody who that I work with who needs to understand something. So I do kind of feel that, not that, like it makes me, I feel like I'm going to make myself sound like a dinosaur, but like just because you have a breadth of knowledge that people who came up after you maybe don't have.
Yeah.
And there's value in that, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Yeah, there's a lot of value. I get a lot of satisfaction from guiding and mentoring and passing the knowledge that I've gained. Like, I
Right.
love sharing that with someone else so then it becomes theirs and they can, do what you will with it.
Right.
Here's some
True.
lessons.
You can only teach so much.
Mm-hmm.
Because I do feel like that's something that I've explored is like, should I just develop a business around training and teaching people and all that? And while I could imagine doing that, it's not really what I'm passionate about. I'd rather do
Mm-hmm.
that in conjunction with a business that is growing and that I'm helping to grow, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. I don't really want to just, coach people on the side, but I like probably could, but
Yeah.
that's just my need.
Great. All right. The final vibe check. I'm going to read all of these because these are important ones. I feel like to know if you're kind of checked out, should check out, do you start looking, or, like I said, in this environment and economy, when it's hard to change, you might just keep doing the mundane. But once something changes or it shifts, do you want to maybe do something different? So if I took a 2-week vacation, I'd be excited to come back or even want to come back. Let's just start there. Like, are you
Where you're like,
dreading
I'm
coming
just
back
gonna
after a
stay on
2-week vacation?
vacation.
Yeah. If you
Yeah.
got an offer from another company today, you'd hesitate to leave. Like, I don't like current environment. I just don't see where I would take anything else right now. Like, I love what I'm doing. Like, I wouldn't. It wouldn't
Yeah,
matter
because
if they came to you with $1 million right now. I'd be like, yeah, no, I'm
right.
good.
Well, I mean, if you set the leveled it up to say like money was the same, like your hours were the same, you were working from like all of these factors, because obviously if you get a huge amount of money, that may sway you more so than, what you're getting, but you just never know what you're going into. So,
Unless I have a golden parachute, I am not leaving. You know what a golden parachute is, yeah? Yeah. And yeah, unless someone was guaranteeing me a golden parachute with that million, this girl's staying planted.
then how can how could you even refuse that, really?
You'd have to have like something. If you're in a good environment, let's just say you're in a great work environment, you're enjoying what you're doing, you are able to make decisions and also help progress. You are helping other people solve problems. That's what, do all day. Help other people solve their problems. I go back to environment because I've been a part of some environments that haven't been so great. Been a part of a lot of great ones or some that started great and then as you start to see, they turn a little bit. But I feel like at this point in my life, that price tag on environment is pretty dang high. It's pretty dang high. Once you find somewhere you enjoy, right? Like there's a couple that if I think back, I was like, I mean, I would left to grow my skill set or whatever, but yeah,
And I know, and I agree with that, because I think too, you get to a point where there's only so much money you can make that, you know, I mean,
I wish I was in that place.
right, right. But if money was not a
Popping dollars, popping
consideration,
bottles.
if money wasn't a consideration.
Yeah.
But then that tethers you to things in a different way, right? Like if you suddenly start making a lot more money, then you're going to be, how is that going to change you and your lifestyle to where you have to kind of keep that up? Like we've struggled financially since I've been unemployed, but I was really glad we didn't have car payment.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things like that that, had I gone down that road and bought a new car a year or two ago, would have made it a lot harder.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I think that's the trick. Like I really do. If you go from one place to the next, and I've done this where I've made a lot more money going to the second place, going from one place to the next place. And the key is truly you don't increase your lifestyle, right? You live the same exact way, which is hard for so many people, right? Because all of a sudden you get X dollars, you want the bigger house or the big, because what society tells us as people, I think we talked about this like a little bit on the last episode too, right?
Probably.
Keeping up with the Joneses, right? We talked about that on
Right.
14. But society teaches you you've made it when you have the nice car. You've made it when you've had the big house. You've made it when you have, but
The
you
designer
necessarily
handbag
don't need those things, right? You need a roof over your head, running water,
food.
electric. You're in pretty good darn shape. You got transportation, regardless if it's old or new, that works. You're in pretty good shape. But this thing starts to set in people's brains that say, you need to spend more. You need bigger, whatever that looks like, instead of saying,
It's the American dream. Well, I think some of that's going to change though, because with the economy being what it is and tariffs and things, that will probably force people to spend less money and or be more thoughtful about, what they're spending their money on. So there's that. But no, I have thought a lot about it because, you know, I think one of the things I do is when I'm stressed or I'm, feeling burnout is like spend money, like buy things. And
yeah,
it's so easy these days to spend money online and I'll just I'll just buy that, I saw something and I'm like, oh yeah, let me get that. And then it's you get that little hit of dopamine, from ordering it, and then when you get it you get a little dip dopamine. And there's so many things that like skincare or makeup and stuff like that that I bought when I was working that I have not needed to replace because I have so much of it. There's certain things now where I'm like, okay, I ran out of that a few months ago and I want to replace it. But it's kind of forced me to use up things that I had and really evaluate if it's something I really wanted to keep or spend the money when I don't have very much. Is this $10 I want to spend on this? Do I really feel like, it's interesting because I haven't been in that place for a long time.
yeah,
Been able to just spend money on things and it wasn't a big deal. So I'm like, okay, Kevin and I have talked about it. Like, okay, well, we're gonna really focus once I'm working full time, trying to, build up some reserves and keep working to, dig ourselves out of a hole. And, I'm really like, okay, I taken all like the shopping apps off my phone and, the things. And I did that once before where I unsubscribed to a lot of email things when they would tell me a sale's going on and you're like, oh, I'll just go look. And then you're like, oh, that top's cute. And then
you pop it in the cart.
and that's not okay. That's, that creates
Stress
more waste.
shopping, it's
And
it's a real thing. Like I
yeah,
think we something that makes you feel good. It's easy. It's accessible. Like you stress shop and you do those things. I mean, I bought like a couple of things here and there, but I don't shop like I used to. I don't. None of it. None of it. One, because I don't want to. Now I don't want to spend the money. Now I'm too cheap.
right.
And two,
Right.
I don't need it. Like I'm fine.
It's really interesting when you start kind of going through that. Like, what's really that important and what can you
Yeah.
keep and you get rid of?
All right. The last one is gut check. Does your gut say you're in the right place or not? So
Or is that just hunger pains?
yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's kind of the gut check. Should you stay? Should you go? I mean, you might need to stay for now because of the way things are shaping out. Some companies will not want to hear this podcast to be like, oh, that's why people are not attriting out of our organization right now. We normally have 50% Attrition. Could be why. Could be the economy. You got to come up with another plan to make sure
Well,
you're
and
getting
do you think
work
that
quality.
companies should evaluate some of that? Like, are all the people who have been here for 20 plus years the only ones that are staying long term? And are they forcing people out because they are, blocking promotions and access to, bigger titles or more money? And I'm not a title person. I could really care less what I'm called because I know in reality it doesn't mean anything. I don't take it as such. But, I mean, it's the power of the pocketbook though too. Like if you're
Yeah.
getting paid well, it does make it harder for you to leave. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I feel like, you know what, the title thing is it's a pretty big deal because some people feel like, one, I don't care about title. And there's also leaders who don't care about title. But what I would say, and this is a previous role, there was a leader who was like, title doesn't really matter. And I'm like, well, you can say that because you are the highest
Right.
title in the organization, right? That it doesn't matter. But when you think about people like people's
Perception.
identities, how they identify, perception, right? I just remember one of these really big conversations of we had I don't remember what they were called at the time. It was like a sales. I think that they might have been like a sales manager, which in the internal in the org was a pretty high level. But then client facing, they were having
Oh, right.
the perception problem to say no one wants to talk to a manager. They want
They want
someone who's a
to or
leader or executive or sales executive. So we had to go through a whole big titling thing. But yeah, but that's another one we should talk about is, do titles matter? Because I can hop the fence on this one because sometimes it
yeah.
does matter when you tied your identity to everything and you come
I guess
in and yeah.
I guess I would say that it depends because I have been in that situation where you're trying to show that you know what you're talking about
Mm-hmm.
and people aren't respecting you because you're not of the right title
Yeah.
because people recognize presidents and executives and even director and above. So when you're not, you may have the same responsibility as somebody who's a director or VP or at Clover, you know there was VPs who were managers, but they had the title of VP, and it's like that's
Yes.
a little interesting. Like they're giving somebody a title and you know that they're not getting paid the same,
Mm-hmm.
but like, so that's why I guess for me it doesn't matter personally the title because it's about the job and
Yeah.
and then the compensation. But I do recognize that to the outside world or people that you're working with, the title does make a difference.
Well, and if I'm honest about it, right? If I'm completely honest with myself and I'm completely honest with you and anyone who is at the end of this episode listening, I took a title that was about 4 titles back from where I was, right? When you think about being a chief recruiting officer or a senior vice president running an entire business, going back down to a director, like that's a big thing. And I know there's probably people looking going, what the hell did she do? Like she went from here to here. But one, it was about, what do I really want to do? What do I enjoy? How am I going to feel fulfilled as I come back in to a role right after leaving Clover and making that decision? That was a really hard decision for me because I worked so hard to get there in my career. And I worked for the titles. Like I worked for the pay. I worked for the titles. I worked to climb. And that's what I did. So then completely removing myself from that by my own accord. Some people think that was really crazy. It probably was. I don't know, but I'm happy
Yes,
now.
it is unusual. It's definitely unusual, but at this time, like it was the right thing for you to do at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and because you can get sort of, pigeonholed into the, and then when you're at that level, it's harder for you to move because there's only so many places you can go, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of have to step back to go forward, right? And so that's at least my perception because I'm kind of doing the same thing. I'm trying to go a different route and get into something that is in the same space but slightly different, and so some of the people I talk to are like, "You're a little high level for this." And I'm like, "Yeah, but that's by design. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I want to take this knowledge and convert it in this way." And, because that's where I see is the real long-term opportunity.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It is, and, like, when I saw so, again, nothing's off the table, and I will always be 1,000% transparent to no matter who I'm talking to. But when I actually saw, like, on a public document, I was like, "I wonder what people are gonna think." And I had to remind myself and tell myself, like, "Who gives a shit what people think?" Like, "This is where I wanna be, this is where I'm happy, this is what." But you do, like, even when you disassociate and reassociate, and you come in a little bit differently, or doing something different, or have a different goal in mind, you can't help but let those thoughts creep in to say, like, I know people are thinking like, "Oh, what'd she do?" Or, "Why did she fall off?"
Right.
Or,
She
you
really
know what I
screwed
mean?
up.
Like, that just it's human nature to do that, and I had to continue, like, to reset myself, and I wrote the one thing that I posted on LinkedIn about, just kinda questioning yourself and that you're enough and all that, and that's kinda where that thought came from. It's, "No, this is what you wanna do, this is where you wanna be, this is your trajectory and your path that you see, happy, healthy," all of those things, right? So I think, there's still, though, with the whole, title thing dynamic, where have you been in your career and where are you going? Man, that's a it's a reality, and I've talked to a lot of people about that have been, VPs even on my teams and things like that, and they're looking at a lesser role. That's it, and they kind of have that same thought, the same struggle, the same. But I just want to be happy where I am, and I want to enjoy what I'm doing, and I want to enjoy where I'm working, and I want to pass my knowledge. So,
Well, it's conditioned. We've all been conditioned through our education system to get straight A's and do extra credit and
yeah.
be part of associations, and then you go into the workforce and you're getting to the next rung, and so on and so forth. And do if I do this, is it going to make me step back? And it's all by design. Like, that's just how our system is
Mm-hmm.
made up. And so the only way to get around that is either you have to be willing to step back in whatever way that looks like, or completely change careers or go into business for yourself. Those are basically your options. Or completely get out of it altogether. None of those is a perfect solution. You have to figure out what works for you, you know. I know kind of the minimum I need to make financially, but I feel like it's worth it to step back a little bit in that way, to do something that I'm more excited about,
Yeah.
and that I can use my skills in a different way. And then recognize that during this time that I've been an employee, we started the podcast, I've been writing articles, doing a little bit of contract work and stuff, and that's probably what my life will look like, for the remainder of my
Mm-hmm.
career, is doing these other things, which is good for your soul too, right?
Yeah.
And it kind of helps you utilize your skills in a different.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree with that, and I think, when I mentioned about earlier in the episode, to say the key is, and the trick is, when you make, you know, so much more exponentially, to maintain that lifestyle, so you can get out of your debt, so you can get out, like all of the things when you make more. So then you can do something different, and I feel like I was very fortunate to be able to do that. So
Right.
to say I'm not going to change my lifestyle and the way that I was living at all. I maybe went on a little bit more trips, Danielle, but other
Right.
than that, I didn't, like, change my house. I didn't change my car. I love my car that I have, and I hate that I have to figure out what I'm going to do with it because it's now a rust bucket. But anyways, whole nother story. So when you think about those things, I think that's the key to being able to pivot and do something different too, is being able to maintain, or still maintain. Not, I mean, if you can afford it, you go buy whatever you want. You go buy the biggest house on the planet. I don't care. It's not my money. But
But are you going to be trapped because of that, and
if
you're
you
going to be house poor?
right, if you wanna pivot, if you wanna change, if you wanna leave an environment that is not conducive to you and you're not sure, especially now, I'll just keep saying it, in our time of uncertainty, and it's been uncertain for a while, then the real key is maintaining your place and where you are, knowing, to your point, Danielle, what is your minimum that you can work with and still sustain life, and still be able to maybe put a little bit away so you have a little nest egg, or,
Mhm.
you're able to sustain if something were to happen, a year out, or whatever that looks like. But yeah, that's the biggest key. And if anybody wants advice on changing or doing something different or whatever it is, I mean, happy to share our story even more, to how we've gotten to where we are, because we are taking, I mean, even though it's in the same area realm, we are taking a pretty big, pivot when you think of the world of, staffing, still supporting it and RPO, still supporting it, but just in a completely different way that brings us joy, right? That's a
Right.
whole nother.
That's exciting. And,
Yeah,
you feel like you can make a difference. So, yeah, it's definitely interesting. So, exciting things. Hopefully, I'll be able to share that I have a new role coming on the horizon. Fingers crossed. Could you
definitely.
do?
It will happen. It's going to happen. So there we are. All right. You want to stop there?
Yeah, I think that's a good place to end.
Okay. This has been our episode 15, sponsored by Social Jobs. Danielle, all yours.
Like, follow, subscribe, comment helps us to get our episodes in front of more eyes. You can find us on all the major streaming platforms: YouTube, Spotify, Audible, Audio Boom, iHeart, Apple, etc., etc. So please give us a like and a follow, comment, ask us any questions that you might be interested in answering. We will be having some guests coming up pretty soon in the near future. So if you're interested in being a guest of ours, hit us up. Our email's in the show notes and we can talk about it.
All right. You can buy us a cup of coffee. Remember, we're on all your favorite listening portals. Link down there for Osreen as well. And until next time, bye.
Bye.